Hello all you wonderful people. I am here with my video for the week and I have a lot to talk about regarding major changes occurring within TNA and WWE programming over the course of the summer. We're going to see a lot of things change in the next month or so, but before I get to that, I do want to talk about Ring of Honor and specifically the way they do pay-per-views. You might notice last week I did a pay-per-view preview video for both Sacrifice and Over the Limit. But I did not talk about Ring of Honor Border Wars, which occurred last week. And the reason for that is because I have decided not to order any more Ring of Honor pay-per-views until they get their act together and start putting on pay-per-views consistently without any technical gaffes. I mean, I'm only paying the last... I didn't buy Border Wars. I haven't even watched it, but I did buy the last one. And when everything just went to hell on the technical side of things, I said, and it happens so frequently with their pay-per-views, and it happened almost every time I've ordered them, to the point that it's like, you know what, I want to watch a live pay-per-view, and for whatever reason, Ring of Honor just can't get it straight. Before the problem was, oh, it's Go Fight Live, it's not Ring of Honor. Okay, now they're streaming it on their website, and then I heard that the stream cut out about midway through the show. Again, I didn't watch it, but... I wasn't surprised when I read it, because it's just par for the course for them that there's just technological problems just killing their pay-per-views. And it's like, and they're cheap shows. I mean, what, $15? But when I pay for a show and I want to watch it live, and that's kind of the thing, I don't want to watch a replay. I want to watch the live show because it's just different watching a show happen as it actually happens rather than... watching a replay later. It's just got a different vibe. It's new material being presented. That's why Raw is so much more energetic than SmackDown most of the time, because Raw's a live show and it's happening on the spot rather than, being taped. Which I do have something to comment on there later in this video, but we'll get there. But with Ring of Honor, I mean, they've got to get that under control where they fix their pay-per-view problems, and it'll be a while before I order another Ring of Honor pay-per-view, because they have to be consistent and prove to me that they can put on their shows consistently without any of these mishaps. Because it was happening way too frequently when they were with Go Fight Live, and after what happened last week, they're still having problems, even just streaming it on their website. So hopefully that gets fixed. Because I want to support Ring of Honor. I think it's important to have, other successful wrestling companies out there. I'm a proponent of the more the merrier. More options. It's better for the business. It's better for the talents to have other places to go. And I do want to support Ring of Honor, but I can't spend my money on you when you can't give me what I want. It's like, okay, when I pay for a live pay-per-view, I expect to have the product go on without a hitch. I mean, this would be like if... I remember when TNA in 2006, back when I actually really liked TNA, I think the first half of 2006 is when TNA was at their best, creatively. And they put on one pay-per-view where the pay-per-view feed cut out in the middle, or at the end of the first match, so we missed the ending of the first match. And they did another pay-per-view a few months later where fire caught in the Impact Zone and they had to stop the show for half an hour. And I forgave those instances because it hadn't become a regular thing yet. It was like, if it happened just once, it's like, okay, that shit happens. Beware of Dog. I ordered Beware of Dog, and I remember what happened when the pay-per-view cut out back in '96. I mean, by default, Beware of Dog is the worst pay-per-view in WWE history. It has nothing to do with anything they did on the show, because we didn't see the show. Because Mother Nature was a bitch and cut out the pay-per-view feed. WWE gave us a free... retry a couple nights later, and they've never really had a problem since. So, okay, I can forgive Beware of Dog because they compensated me in a way that was satisfying, and, it didn't become a regular thing. So I can forgive one or two mishaps. I can't forgive it when it's a constant thing. It's like, all right, you've got to start from scratch and kind of rebuild my trust from there. So no more Ring of Honor pay-per-views for me for a while. But hopefully they get their act together and they fix whatever, streaming problems that they have with their shows. But the bulk of this video is going to be about WWE and TNA, especially regarding the several changes that both shows are going to go through in the next few weeks or so. First of all, let's start with TNA. I saw Sacrifice last week, and I thought it was good. It wasn't a bad show. And considering I went into the show with absolutely no expectations, that's what do you do? I mean, the storylines still aren't there. I still contend that most of those matches weren't well built at all. But, it's, I guess when you're in that situation, it's up to the wrestlers to kind of make the most of what they're given and put on the best show possible. And they did. I thought Aries and Bully Ray stole the show, and that doesn't surprise me. It was the best feud, best built struggles between the two characters. I really liked their interactions together, and I was actually interested in that match, and they turned out to have what I felt was the best match on the show. AJ and Angle was pretty good. I thought the ladder match was good. I thought the tag match was good. I thought the knockouts match was surprisingly decent. I didn't know Brooke had gotten it as solid as she is. I mean, she's not, like, fantastic, but it's, it's better than you expected. You put her in there, I expected to be like a Kelly Kelly situation, and it actually wasn't anything like that at all. It was a fairly solid show all around, and nothing. They didn't do anything that was typical bad TNA booking, I felt. They kept it pretty straight and just focused on putting on the best show they possibly could. So, for what it was a good pay-per-view, and hopefully they're able to, draw from the good experiences there and be more consistent in putting on good shows from there. Now, as for all the other major announcements that are happening within TNA, number one, they signed King Mo, who, if I haven't mentioned it before, I am not a huge MMA follower. I watch it from time to time. The last show I watched was the one on Strikeforce, or the Strikeforce show that was main evented by, what were their names? Misha Tate and Ronda Rousey, the two chicks. And I thought Ronda Rousey was pretty hilarious. I really kind of dug her. But I did watch that show, and every now and then I'll catch a UFC fight. But for the most part, I'm not an avid MMA watcher. I'm not a huge fan. I enjoy it from time to time, but it's not a passion of mine. So I have no idea who King Mo is. I don't know if he's any good. I don't know if he would fit into the realm of wrestling. I don't think that trying to find a guy to cross-promote between wrestling and MMA is a bad idea. I think that's the reason why TNA desperately wanted Lesnar. I think that's why they tried to get Lashley, although Lashley's MMA career didn't pan out and his run in TNA was forgettable at best. Actually, the only reason I remember his run in TNA was because of Scott Steiner. So, I love Scott Steiner. But, I don't think it's a bad idea. I don't know if King Mo's the guy to go with. I don't know if he's any good, but I guess we'll find out, and I think it'll be interesting. And it's something different. It adds a different flavor to the typical professional wrestling flavor, because, some people, and I tend to lean this way as well, I think that wrestling should change its presentation to reflect a more MMA style. I mean, you still have to have the writing, you still have to have the entertainment aspect, but I think that this Attitude Era Monday Night Wars television presentation that they're still trying to do is antiquated, and it's time to evolve beyond that, and maybe trying to borrow elements from UFC and MMA in general to try and find a new presentation for wrestling, I think is a good idea. Or at least it's, I can respect you for trying to do something different, rather than just going back to the same Monday Night Wars over and over again. It'll be interesting to see what happens with him. I have this fear, and they're hyping up a surprise for their May 31st show for the time change, and they're going live, which I'll get into that in a second. I have this fear that they've signed Batista, and I don't think Batista's a good investment. And the reason I say that is because he's old, he's injury prone. I just don't think there's much of an upside to him, because I don't think you're going to get much out of him. I think you'll get an initial spark like you did with Angle, but unlike Angle, who can at least, even when the spark is over, he can still consistently contribute to the product in positive ways. Batista's not going to be able to do that. He's not that good of a worker, and he's injury prone. I remember when WWE brought him back in 2009, he had just come back from an injury, and then he got hurt again like 2 months later. So he's fragile. He's very, very fragile, and if they did sign him, I don't know. I have this fear that they did. I just don't think he would be a worthwhile investment. I don't think they're going to get much out of him. And speaking as a fan who's watched Batista from when he first got to the WWE, I think, in my opinion, he had 1 year. He had 1 year, and that was in 2005, where he was legitimately hot. And he had this spark to him that's like, you know what? not the most talented guy in the world, but he's got this X factor to him that makes him really cool, and I kind of look forward to seeing him. It's like the Goldberg thing. It's like I can't put my finger on it, but there's something about him that's really cool. And it worked for about a year. Then he got hurt, and then he just kind of coasted for the rest of his run there without like the initial spark. The spark was gone. I mean, yeah, he had a couple of good matches with Taker here and there, but it wasn't. It was kind of like Goldberg. Well, to draw another comparison, Goldberg. It was kind of like Goldberg in 2000 after the streak was over, and they'd already, his best days, the best parts of his run had already been over. A few years later, it was like, you don't really matter anymore, and that's kind of what happened to Batista. And it felt like they just kept him in those main event spots because they felt like they had to, because they put so much into him. So yeah, if they did sign Batista, I think that's a mistake. I don't think he's going to be much of a positive for them. But we'll see. I would think they would go more for somebody like John Morrison because they desperately need to build up the X Division roster. Most of the new guys they brought in were busts. Zema Ion is okay. Mark Haskins wasn't any good. Tony Nese didn't really. I mean, he's replaceable. I mean, not that he's like a bad athlete or anything, but there's nothing to him that really made him stand out. And so they really need to bolster that X Division roster just to give Austin Aries somebody to work with. And I think they would go for somebody more like a John Morrison. I think he would be a better fit for TNA just to bolster the X Division, if nothing else. I think he's somebody that they should look into. Those are my thoughts on Batista. As for the other announcements in TNA, I think them going live, and I think just Impact putting on live shows throughout the summer is a really good idea. I think live shows just have a different vibe to them. They have a better energy. I remember when TNA went live every other week during the failed Monday Night War experiment. The live shows were typically better than the tape shows. Like, I could tell the difference, which show was live and which one was taped. It's just a different energy, a different vibe. And it's not going to fix any of the problems. I mean, Raw is live, and there were periods where Raw was completely unwatchable, and I've got a lot to say about this week's Raw, so I'll get there when we get there. But so a live show doesn't guarantee a good show, but I do think it helps the presentation. That's one thing better to help make TNA a better show. I'm not going to fix the writing, and they still have a lot to clean up there. But I do think that presenting their show live is a better way to go than presenting their show, taping once every 2 weeks or once every 3 weeks or whatever it is, and doing things the way they've been doing them. I especially think that a live show, and I was talking about this with over with the guys at WrestlingEpicenter.com, the open fight night concept would be so much better if it were a live show because, you're trying to sell this show as a show full of matches that are made on the spot, and each match is supposed to be a surprise. Well, you can't really sell it as a surprise if the show was taped 2 weeks earlier. So, there's that. So I think going live is really going to help that. The time change, I think, was obviously a response to the ratings slumping. So that's why they're doing that. And I do think it's a good idea to not have them go head-to-head with NFL. Because, I can tell you right now which one I'm probably going to watch. So at least they get that 1 hour where they're not against the NFL game. But, them going live, I think, is a fine idea. Now, the one announcement that made me cringe, and it's even worse than them signing Batista. They signed Brooke Hogan to do God knows what. I don't even know what her role's going to be, but I'm just thinking, it's like, oh, wow. Is she going to be Garrett Bischoff's manager? Is that what we're going to... They should just do that, team nepotism. And I'm like, do we really need her there? And, Hogan trying to put his friends in position or put his family in positions, when has it ever panned out? Like Brutus the Barber Beefcake, was he any good? No. Got Bubba the Love Sponge, do we remember that? I mean, come on, this isn't going to work. I mean, whatever role they have planned for Brooke Hogan, it's just not going to work, and I don't think it's going to generate anything more than just get people to point fingers and say nepotism at TNA, even if they don't use her in anything that significant. If they just use her as like a I don't know, just a body to put there. Like, I remember in TNA's early years, they used to have the cage dancers, which was really tacky, by the way. Going back and watching those old episodes, I see, those old weekly pay-per-views they used to do. And I see, like, fucking cage dancers on the entranceway, and I'm like, that is so tacky. It's so bad, but... yeah, even if they use her for something like that, it's still like, why is she even there? I don't care. So that's really bad. But, TNA, I'll give them credit for at least trying to do a couple new things to try and, liven up the product a little bit, because it had gotten really, really stale. And I do like that next week's show. I haven't read the spoilers, so I don't know how it goes. I do like that they're actually having Rude defend the title on the day where he becomes the longest reigning champion, just to kind of give him... one last obstacle before he reaches that milestone. And so I think that's really interesting. A good way to go. So, take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have the facts of life. The facts, I guess. But, yeah, that's all the TNA news, really. I guess we'll see how things turn out once all these changes take place and everything. But I do like the live TV thing. King Mo is at least interesting, and I'm willing to give that a shot. Brooke Hogan, I don't know what the hell. Seriously, what the hell? That's a big what the fuck. Now getting into WWE, the big format change that they're doing, I think they said in July it's going to take place, is that Raw is going to go 3 hours every week. I do not like this. I do not like, because I remember when Nitro went 3 hours. And Nitro, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Nitro went 3 hours at the tail end of 98, when they were still at least watchable. They had not quite imploded yet. They were still, WWF was ahead of them, but creatively they weren't completely terrible, and the show was at least still enjoyable. And when I heard they were going 3 hours, I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool, another hour, because I was young and stupid. But I could tell almost immediately this show's just too bloated, and it goes on too long, and it's I don't know, like do I really want to watch a 3 hour show every week? Because in WWE's case, number one, I don't think their product now is as good as WCW was in 1998, where WCW. And WCW warranted the 3 hour show. You could argue it because of how big their roster was, and the show was at least better than WWE is now. But WWE, they have trouble putting on 2 hour shows most of the time. And the roster is stretched so thin in a lot of ways that it's hard to fill a 2 hour block for them. And they've devalued so much of their roster, like their tag division and and things of that nature, to the point that it's like they're gonna have a hard time filling that extra hour every week, unless they do some serious changes with the creative structuring and how they handle their roster and everything. And I'll be honest, this week's Raw, use an example of how sometimes Raw can just really piss me off. This week's Raw was truthfully like the worst Raw in a while, and probably the angriest I've been watching an episode of Raw since the Muppet Show that they did, because that show just defiled my childhood and made me want to cry over the grave of Jim Henson, and watching his beloved creations get bastardized like that. But that's neither here nor there. But this week's show was so bad because, again, it kind of plays into what I talk about all the time. Titles don't matter. Nothing else really matters. We just got to build heat on the evil boss, and that's all that matters. And we just got to keep pumping heat into that evil boss, whether it's Vince McMahon, whether it's Eric Bischoff, whether it's Hulk Hogan, whether it's fucking Ric Flair, or who else has played an evil boss? Vicky Guerrero, the goddamn computer, Mike Adamle, Michael Cole, Johnny Ace. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who it is. We have to pump heat and energy and time into this evil boss character. And it's so antiquated. That's the best way I can use best word I can use to describe it. It's old hat. I don't care anymore, because all that's going to happen... First of all, Johnny Ace is going to win at the pay-per-view. Because Big Show is going to come back, and since he's not an employee of the WWE, that'll be their out to have him unwillingly help Johnny Ace defeat John Cena, and that's probably what they'll do. I mean, I just don't understand why all the stories have to be centered around an evil boss anymore. Like, it's 2012. It's not 1998 anymore. Okay, we're so far past that. It's ridiculous. And I could forgive it if they hadn't been doing it straight for the entire time. Like, if it had gotten like an 8-year break or something, and then they tried to do the evil boss thing again, fine. But it never went away. It's just, there's always some version of it somewhere. And it is the most overused storyline in wrestling. And again, I don't care. I just don't care about building heat on the evil boss anymore. A Big Show in this situation, he was Trish Stratus. Thank God they didn't have him get down on his hands and knees, strip down to his underwear, and bark like a dog. But, it was the same type of stuff that Vince was doing, over a decade ago. And even Vince McMahon got stale at some point. It's like, look, let's just stop it. I don't care anymore. Especially after he feuded with Bret, where it was like, okay, the whole reason for him being a heel has now been undone. Can we just stop it now? But it's, I don't know if, they know how to live without it, and that's a major problem, with the way they do things. And, as we saw on Raw this week, the evil boss and what he's doing is more important than the World Heavyweight title, or the WWE title. You got Punk and Daniel Bryan, this match that the internet wants, that you have a portion of your fan base that's legitimately energized about. Both guys are over for whatever reason. It's not necessarily because the WWE has showcased Daniel Bryan as well as they could, but, they didn't showcase him at all, this entire quote-unquote build-up for this pay-per-view match. But look, they're both over. You're going to get a great match out of them. Why not promote this match as something that people would want to see? Or something that people should see. Like, I should be chomping at the bits thinking, man, CM Punk and Daniel Bryan, this is going to be awesome. But they've done absolutely nothing to build this match up, to the point that I, at times, have forgotten that they're even doing this match. And it's a lot of the same things that I said about Robert Roode and Rob Van Dam at Sacrifice, where it's like, look, you just threw this together and hoped it would stick, and you did very little to build it up. To the point that I'm really apathetic to what goes on here. And, they've done so little to build up this match, and this is supposed to be the main event, right? And I'm looking at this pay-per-view card because, once again, they only have 5 matches. And I find it hilarious that they advertise pre-show matches now. They've done that 2 months in a row. And yet, their pay-per-view cards are always, they're always scrambling the day of to just cram matches onto the card and to find something to kill time on the pay-per-view because they don't have enough matches. And I'm like, look, why? Hello? Come on. So you'll probably see the Funkasaurus thrown out there. You'll probably see Ryback thrown out there. You'll probably see... Punk and Bryan might have to go an hour, because I can't imagine too many of those matches. The tag match probably isn't going to go that long. The Divas match definitely isn't going to go that long. What else is on there? The 4-way might be lengthy. Cena and Ace, how long can that possibly go? So it's like, yeah, Punk and Bryan, they might go an hour. So if you're into the long matches, that might be the time to do it, because there aren't enough matches. Once again. So you have this match that's almost guaranteed to be really good, and you've done nothing to promote it, so why should I give a shit if you don't give a shit? And it's all goes back to, well, the evil boss takes precedence over everything else. And that's the storyline that we're going to pump from now until eternity, because we don't want to change. It's funny. I love when people say, it's like, oh, it should go back to the Attitude Era, when in a lot of ways the Attitude Era never really left. And that goes into what I talked about with the TV format needing to change. The TV format really hasn't changed since the Attitude Era. Yes, they went PG at one point, and yes, a lot of those guys are gone, Rock and Austin aren't regulars anymore. But the same basic structure and the same basic format is there. They just do it... They don't do it as well. The characters aren't as interesting, and everything that they do is just stale anyway, because we've seen it 100 times, seen it presented the exact same way dozens and dozens of times, to the point that the product's just stale, and there needs to be major changes in how they present their show. And them going an extra hour, I don't think is going to change much, except maybe make their show feel more bloated. But again, I mean, we'll see how it goes. I'll give it a chance, obviously. I don't know if it'll... I'm not super excited about it. I just think it'll just create problems like it did for Monday Nitro back in the day. And, but we'll see. God, what else is there to talk about? I mean, yeah, I pretty much rambled about everything. So, yeah, we're going to be seeing a lot of changes within TNA and within WWE over the summer. It'll be interesting to follow. At least it's, at least I have something to talk about rather than just, talk about how stale everything is. Well, I mean, I guess I'm still doing that anyway, but... at least they're trying to make changes in areas that are important. I do think the formatting and the creative is where most of the problems in wrestling lie. It's usually not the wrestlers and it's usually not the roster. It's usually falls on creative and how the show is presented in general. And those are where the two areas need to be fixed. And again, going back to Raw, I think one thing that WWE has done very well is how they're handling the whole Brock Lesnar situation. I love having Paul Heyman back. I mean, he's really shown the value of a manager. Speaking for Brock Lesnar is the most interesting character in wrestling right now, and he hasn't been on TV for 2 weeks, and that's because of Paul Heyman. And how they presented this whole situation. What they did with Paul Heyman and Triple H on Raw was so different from how everything else on this show looked. Like, you opened the show with this very realistic, very serious situation between Triple H and Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman threatening to sue Triple H for assault might be the most realistic thing to ever happen in wrestling. Because that's how a real person would react in that situation. But then you bookend the show, and you ended with this ridiculous segment with John Cena where he was channeling Jim Carrey at Jim Carrey's absolute worst. Like, it was... I mean, what I learned from Raw is that John Cena's favorite movie is Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, which was awesome when I was 8 years old, did not age well at all, and I didn't enjoy seeing Cena do it either. But it basically took what was I thought was supposed to be like, look, whatever I thought about the whole Big Show situation, they wanted that to be a really serious and sad situation, and then you have Cena go out there and make the whole thing look like a joke, and kind of ruin the whole thing, and it just really offset even though I wasn't interested in what they were doing to begin with, it completely ruined what they were trying to do at all in the first place by Cena just like making a complete joke out of the thing, and the rest of the show should really reflect what they did in that opening segment with Paul Heyman and Triple H. Like that tone, that presentation, it should be more like that, but instead we get like one segment that's like that, and the rest of the show is just the same old, same old. But yeah, that's really all I got. I've rambled on and on, but that's what I get for being a little late with my video. And I was supposed to do this on Wednesday, but more and more updates keep coming up as the longer and longer I put the video off. So yeah, that's all I've got for now. I'll be back next week. I'll be sure to talk about Over the Limit because I am going to see it at some point, and I'll probably talk briefly about that next week, and hopefully I have another interesting topic to talk about, and hopefully, these developments with WWE and TNA, good or bad, and, there's a lot of good and a lot of bad there, hopefully it'll give me something to talk about at least. So until then, I'll see you all later, and enjoy your weekend.